All right. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Okay. All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here this morning. If you want to go ahead and find a seat, we'll get our program started. And good morning to everyone. We're grateful that you're here. I'm Josh White. I'm the CAAR president-elect. And Ann is suffering at the beach this week. So if you see her, or you won't see her, but if you see her on Facebook, just send her a message. Tell her we missed her here. Thanks for joining us today for the CAAR 2024 Property Rights Luncheon. And we're grateful for our guests that we have here today. A few reminders before we get started. First, if you haven't done so, please make sure that you do sign in at the registration desk out front. The session will be recorded and made available on the CAAR YouTube channel as well. So if you want to share it with some colleagues, that would be great. And third, your safety is top of mind. So I just want to remind you, in case of an emergency today, point out the closest exits to those in the room. We've got these two on the side. And in addition to this, two exit doors located in the ballroom, they'll go out to the side parking lot. We have 4 doors immediately outside this room leading out to the terrace as well. Once on the terrace, you'll find the walkway around the back of the building to the front parking lot as well. You can also exit the ballroom and pre-function area and leave the way you came in through the front doors. So expand advocacy and community engagement is one of the pillars in the CAAR strategic plan. And today's lunch is going to focus on those. We're going to focus on one of the largest drivers of our local economy, which is the University of Virginia and their affordable housing initiative. UVA President Jim Ryan's great and good strategic plan commits land and over $1 million to enable the development of 1,000 to 1,500 affordable housing units on land in Charlottesville or Albemarle County. Before turning the session over, I'd like to introduce CAAR's 2024 Public Affairs Committee Chair, Jim Dickerson. He's going to provide a few words about today's event sponsor, which is the Realtor Political Action Committee, or RPAC. Jim.
Good morning. How are y'all doing? Everybody's doing great, right? We've got through Monday and the changes there. We're still listing and selling, helping buyers and sellers of homes, farms, and land, right? A little commercial property occasionally, maybe doing some property management. All these things benefit from RPAC. Who knows what RPAC stands for? Realtor Political Action Committee, right? Too many times we just use RPAC and nobody knows. So we, at the RPAC side of things, advocate for you and your clients on the local, state, and national level. They also do advocacy and education. This luncheon is an example of that advocacy and education. So we want to thank RPAC for our lunch today. We want to write a check to RPAC to help support RPAC so we can keep having free lunches. We can keep having local, state, and national advocacy and working for you and your clients. Thank you very much and have a great lunch.
Thank you so much, Jim. Yeah, RPAC, cannot say enough good things about RPAC. If you want to learn about how RPAC works for you and your clients, you can email rpac@caar.com for more information. Next step in our process today is going to be lunch. So we're going to go to lunch and then we'll have our panel up here after that. So. Okay. Great.
Good afternoon. I'm Neil Williamson with the Free Enterprise Forum. I also serve as the Government Affairs Director for the Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors. In that role, I serve with the Public Affairs Committee. The committee comes up with these ideas. I strongly encourage you, we're heading into the draft cycle, to sign up for the committee so that you can be a part of the driving force of this. These great ideas don't come from me. They come from the committee. Provided to you on each of the tables is a handout that includes all of the maps for the 3 projects areas that we'll be talking about, as well as the the guiding guidelines for what UVA has planned with their affordable housing initiative. That the index cards that are on your table are for your questions. If you have a question during the presentation, this is called the National Press Club model. If we're going to have we're actually going to have 4 presentations. Write down your question, bring it on up to Lauren, who is our technical director today, has the basket for cards, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. I appreciate you being here, and I apologize for the lunch delay. They can't blame it on the Hillsdale roundabout. But work amongst yourselves. I'll let you know when the lunch is set up and ready to go. Thank you.
All right, we're going to get going again here. And I do want to, he's already been up here once, but I do want to thank Neil for putting this together, the Free Enterprise Forum, and again, RPAC. Let's go ahead and give them a round of applause. Neil really needs no introduction in this building, but I do want to say Neil Williamson does an amazing job for us, advocating not just for the realtors, but also for clients, for our area, for our market, and keeping a pulse on everything that's happening. So I'm going to get Neil to come back up here and he'll introduce our panelists as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. How's the food? Was it worth the wait? We're joined by Meena Jacob over my shoulder here. Meena's up in Boston, so she could not join us today, but she's joining us via Zoom. I'm thrilled. The process, we'll be introducing each of the speakers. They will have an opening statement. As they have their opening statement, I fully anticipate you guys will have questions. Write them down. Bring them up here to Lauren, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. After all 4 have spoken, we'll then get to the questions. I'm going to start with Pace, and I've written really great introductions. Let's see. Pace Lochte is a higher education leader with over 25 years of service to the University of Virginia. Not in the script. She's a rock star. As his assistant vice president for economic development, Pace partners with the private sector, government, academia, and nonprofit to bring positive change to Virginia by leveraging UVA's unique assets and capabilities. Now listen to this billet of work. Her work includes biotech, nuclear energy, semiconductor chips, autonomous vehicles, and new venture creation. Her business background enables her to position the university as a high-value contributor to public-private partnerships. Pace's work includes initiatives that impact local community as well across the Commonwealth. She is leading the university's affordable housing initiative with the goal of developing 1,000 to 1,500 affordable housing units over the next 10 years. Pace co-founded the Appalachian Prosperity Project, which encompasses the university's efforts in far Southwest Virginia. Please welcome my friend, Pace Lochte.
Thank you, Neil, and thanks everyone. It's great to be here. It's wonderful to see such interest in this initiative. Just a little bit of background. I know you had some information already at your seats, but this was really born out of President Ryan's, when he became president at UVA, he committed to being a better partner with the community. He had the sense that UVA could do more to be better partners, and convened a university community working group to identify what are the top issues that our region faces and what can we work on together, what should we work on together. And affordable housing was the #1 issue people wanted to work on. There are other working groups around early childhood education, around public health, but affordable housing was the #1 issue. And so back in 2020, we formed an advisory group. And our first meeting, I think, was March 2020. So went on hold for a while. And when we reconvened, we realized that we really needed some external help and hired a consultant to help us figure out how we were going to do this. UVA doesn't have a Department of Affordable Housing. So this was new to us, and it's certainly new to higher education. We found that other schools have done versions of this, A lot of them are public schools that are putting money directly into local housing funds, which is probably the most efficient use of funds. Some are building affordable housing for their graduate students or for their junior faculty, but we haven't really found other schools that are using our model, which is really to contribute land to help offset the cost of the development and hopefully make the units more affordable. We did some community outreach initially to figure out where we could fit into this already active market. Sunshine and others have been, working on this for decades, and we certainly didn't want to try to duplicate efforts and just try to understand where we could fit in and be complementary to what's already happening. And the community input also helped us develop the development principles that you see on the materials that Neil provided on your table. And those have really been foundational to everything we do. It's helped guide, the development consultants that we've hired, the development partners. Everything about this project is centered and goes back to these development principles. And then we had to select land. So what we did is we looked at the portfolio of land that UVA and the UVA Foundation own and had a set of criteria that included things like, how walkable is it? How close is it to work centers? Is there infrastructure nearby? How easy would this be to develop? And ultimately came to 3 parcels, and I think you have maps of those on your table as well. The first is a 2-acre parcel at the corner of Wortland and 10th Street, which, although small, is a really important parcel because it's really kind of on the edge of the university and the town, and I think we want to do some interesting things there. There's a 12 to 13 acre parcel, what we call Piedmont. Currently it has faculty housing on it. It's very, whatever the opposite of dense is, it's not very dense. And it's near Fontaine Research Park. And then the third is a parcel out at North Fork, near the airport. So I think this is a kind of a complicated project and there are a lot of parties involved. So I found that it's helpful to kind of explain how we're all working together and what sort of our roles and responsibilities are. So just at a very high level, UVA and the UVA Foundation are contributing the land. We did the preliminary community engagement and we're selecting the development partners. The community, for their part, they helped co-develop the set of development principles. And we hope that they will continue to engage on an ongoing basis, not just the preliminary set of community engagement activities, but helping shape these developments. And then the development partners really are doing the bulk of the work. They are charged with designing the units, going through the entitlement process, design, financing, constructing, operating, and maintaining for the long term. So that's kind of how those activities sort of parse out. And then finally, I'll just end with sort of a current status where we are. The first 2 parcels that I mentioned are further along. We have development partners selected for both. So Meena Jacobs and the Preservation of Affordable Housing, or POA, is our development partner at the Wortland and 10th Street site. And they recently submitted a site plan to the city. So that feels exciting. Feels like things are moving on. Piedmont Affordable Housing, or PHA, Sunshine, is the development partner at Piedmont. And we are really delighted actually to be working with both of these wonderful teams. And we're still doing some due diligence on the sites there. And then North Fork just got rezoned for residential. So that got hung up a little bit with that process. So that's kind of where we are. And there's a lot more to say about this. And I know you'll get a better picture as we move on to the other speakers here.
Thank you, Pace. Next I want to introduce Fred Missel. Fred serves as the Director of Design and Development for the UVA Foundation. He oversees management of the Foundation's development projects. These include North Fork, Boar's Head Resort, projects adjacent to the university grounds, and all property rezonings, entitlements, master planning, design, and construction efforts. In addition, I got to know Fred based on his service at the Albemarle County Architectural Review Board, and now as chair of the Albemarle County Planning Commission. In those roles, I am sure Fred always relishes hearing from the Free Enterprise Forum and our position on issues. Please welcome my friend, Fred Missel.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. We do absolutely love to hear from the Free Enterprise Forum. Thank you. It's a highlight of the night. But no, seriously, I do mean that you bring a lot of great value. So thank you to that. And it's good to see everybody. I come to these gatherings, and it's hard for me to believe I've been in Charlottesville for over 35 years. And when I look around and I recognize so many faces, and I start to think, oh yeah, I guess I have been around for a while. So it's good to see you all. I think there's a risk that I might learn more from you all than you learned from me today, but I'm grateful to be here, and most of all, grateful to be part and partner with the university on this great initiative. So affordable housing, right? We're all really focused on that. It's headlines every day. And so just to be a small part of it and be able to sort of help to facilitate that in the community that I have come to love is a great honor. And so thank you for the opportunity to do that. Pace and the university and you all for having the opportunity to share that. So knowing your audience when you are in front of folks like yourself, I think you probably all know about the University of Virginia Foundation, but I'll do a real quick elevator speech here. Been around since the 80s. We're essentially a full service real estate company, and we have one client, and you probably can guess who that is. So we bring a pretty strong bench of experts in the development and design and asset management field. And so when the university and the president thought of this initiative, I think it made sense for us to partner on this moving forward. So just expand briefly on PACE's mentioning the relationships here. We really are overseeing the management of the properties. So the property will come into the ownership of the foundation, that which is not currently owned by the foundation. We will hold it for the long-term benefit of affordable housing in Charlottesville. We will manage the relationships, the legal agreements, et cetera, with our excellent developers. And we're right in the midst of doing that, as Pace mentioned earlier now. So the in-town properties are really interesting. They differentiate themselves in that they are on active transportation lines. And so they really lend themselves well, I think, to the idea of affordability. They will be 100% affordable at a various rate of AMI or various level of AMI. And I'm sure we'll expand maybe more on that moving forward. And then just a little bit more depth on and this may tie into some of the points that Neil had mentioned in terms of potential questions, entitlements. So North Fork, after a 3+ year rezoning, we have landed the ability to bring 1,400 units of housing to North Fork. It was led because North Fork is an economic driver, we hope, for the university and for the community. The idea of adding housing there was to really strengthen the goal of economic development and to bring 24/7 live, work, play activity to that parcel. So we can get into more detail on North Fork if you all are interested on that. But I will leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Now, you all have noticed Meena behind me. As Preservation of Affordable Housing Vice President for Real Estate Development, Meena Jacob oversees development projects from pre-development to completion and lease-up, including financial analysis, design, and construction, and transfer of the project to property management. Her experience includes the transformational development of the Boston Housing Authority's Whittier Street Apartments public housing community into the award-winning Flat 9 at Whittier mixed income community. Meena is now leading two of POA's largest and most impactful projects, the redevelopment of the Boston Public Library's West End branch into an affordable mixed-use housing community, and UVA's Wurtland and 10th Street project. Please welcome Meena via Zoom.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for welcoming me via Zoom. I really apologize that I can't be there in person but I am thrilled to be on a panel with the three other rock stars that are there in person. And so Just briefly, I think Neil gave a very succinct summary of what we do. Preservation of affordable housing. We basically preserve, create, and maintain affordable housing in communities. And we really specialize in projects that are existing affordable housing that's at risk due to affordability, expiration, or physical deterioration, and at risk to going to market and keep their affordability in place. We also do a lot of new construction, and that's sort of the lane that I live in. So we are thrilled to be working on this project, and really actually working alongside Sunshine and Piedmont Housing. Even though we're not partnering specifically on this project, we're partnering in the initiative. And there are, as we all know, there is a desperate need for affordable housing, and happy to be working in partnership with everybody here to bring that to fruition. So we can I'm sure there'll be more questions about the project specifically that I can answer, but I don't want to take up too much time.
That's great. Thank you for joining us. I know your travel schedule was challenged to be here, and I appreciate you taking the time. Last but certainly not least is Sunshine Mathon. Sunshine began his role as executive director at Piedmont Housing Alliance in 2017. Committed to supporting deeply equitable and sustainable affordable communities, he has led the development of over 1,200 healthy, efficient homes in both Texas and Virginia. As a nationally recognized leader at the intersection of climate resilience and equitable, affordable housing development, Sunshine has consulted with a wide variety of local and national housing intermediaries. In addition to his work on UVA's Piedmont Affordable Housing Project, yesterday it was announced that PHA, Habitat for Humanity, and others were successful in their acquisition effort of the Carlton Mobile Home Park. I have known Sunshine for many years, and he has the unique ability to take these innovative housing affordability concepts and convert them into community-vetted action. Please welcome my friend, Sunshine Mathon.
Thanks, everyone. Glad to be here. And you may have seen my heavy sigh on the mention of Carlton. I mean, it's absolutely worth the celebration, and it has been a very heavy lift over the last 33 days now. But we, when we started that process, I gave it a 1% chance of success. And here we are. So that's remarkable. It was an incredible team effort from City Council to ourselves to Habitat to a couple of lenders that were willing to kind of think outside the box and work with us. So on that note, Piedmont Housing Alliance, for those of you who don't know, is a nonprofit affordable housing organization based here in the Charlottesville region, but serving the surrounding 5 counties as well. Although the bulk of our work, and certainly in development work, is in the Charlottesville and Albemarle region. We go back over 40 years. We are actually a result of a merger of 2 organizations that go back into the 1960s. And over the arc of the organization's history, we have evolved and grown the breadth of the work that we engage in. So now we work with people on the full spectrum of housing affordability. Everything from in working with folks who are at risk of losing their homes, whether through eviction or through loss of their own, what they own, to financial counseling, to affordable rental, and then actually affordable homeownership developments across the spectrum. And actually, but last year, the year before, we crossed the threshold over the arc of the history, the organization's history, helped over 1,000 homeowners become first-time home buyers in some capacity or another, whether it's housing counseling, down payment assistance, development of housing, that sort of thing. We thrive as an organization, thrive in partnership. The result of where we landed yesterday with a Carlton Mobile Home Park is an example of that. But being here at this table and with Meena on the screen as well, I'm looking there because I see her up there. So I know she's behind me over here, but we do our best work when we're working in partnership with community leaders, with funders, with community residents, with peer organizations. And I'm, incredibly grateful and excited about the future of the site that we're working on specifically, which is the Piedmont site that Pace had previously referenced. Many of you may have some sense that the development of affordable housing is hard, but it is not for the faint of heart. So we'll reaffirm that. It requires, yes, you have to do your civil engineering and your architectural design and your community engagement. But one of the hardest things, the things that drives me crazy, but is part of what we got, is the sort of what I call the financial engineering or the financial architecture to achieve affordability. And there is no doubt that in our nation's context, in our state's context, Commonwealth, in our regional context, that housing affordability does not exist anymore without some form of subsidy. We are past the point of no return in that regard, in my opinion. And that subsidy can come in many different ways, but more often than not, we end up piling all those ways on top of each other to reach, in particular, the levels of affordability that we know that a lot of our community members really need to be able to afford where they live. Even though we work in the region as a whole, I'll use one just statistical point here that I think is reflective of the ongoing challenge we face, which is for Charlottesville City proper, it is one of the wealthiest cities, certainly in the Commonwealth. We are outside of Northern Virginia. We are by far the second most expensive region in the Commonwealth. But Charlottesville City, you may not know this, is actually by HUD standards considered a persistent poverty county. And it, county being, it's really a city, but from their perspective, that's the way they evaluate it. And it's because in Charlottesville and the surrounding urban core, we struggle to provide opportunities for upward economic mobility for families. And what a persistent poverty county means is that more than 20% of your residents are below the poverty levels and consistently that way over time. And that is still the case. There may be a time not that far in the future where that changes, that the determination of persistent poverty county changes. But I don't believe it will be because we have seen people come out of poverty. It's because people can no longer afford to be here anymore at all and are leaving the region. So it's a displacement effect. So we see our work fundamentally rooted in partnership with UVA and the foundation to try to provide opportunities for folks to stay in their communities or frankly to return to their community at levels that they can afford. I'll pause there and we can get into particulars on the site and all of that as well.
Great, thank you. The first question goes to Meena. As you're the furthest along with the site plan, congratulations. There are some specific questions involved with regard to what type of unit mix are you looking at, as well as who will these units be targeted for and marketed to? That's a two-part question. I think I kind of prepped you. I hope that's not too far of a curveball. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And if you could also give us the timeline for the project.
Sure. The timeline, let me first start by saying that the units, we're roughly thinking about 180 units. We're potentially thinking about 16,000 square feet of commercial retail on the ground floor. The units will be a mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. Really thinking about existing community Charlottesville residents as an opportunity for them to stay within the community. There are people who work within Charlottesville but can't afford to stay in Charlottesville, so they're moving out into the county, but they have the desire to be in the city. So really thinking about family housing with the low-income housing tax credit program, which is the major financing vehicle. It's not student housing. There can be a student in the household, but it's not student housing. And so I would say that that's one of the biggest questions that we get, particularly from community members. And the fact that the university and the foundation are part of this, as part of their initiative, getting people to understand that we're not providing student housing. So it's really focused on families. It's focused on individuals with the 1-bedrooms that work and live within the area. And the range of incomes would be from 0 to about 80% AMI. In terms of the timeline, we put in for site plan application, we have a pretty aggressive timeline that we're putting forth. You have to be aggressive with these things or hopeful. And we are hoping to put in a tax credit application in the spring of 2025. And then
when does-
once we
what-
get
yeah.
to, it usually takes a process for the closing. So once we actually close the deal, we project 18 to 24 months of construction.
So that puts us into 2026.
2026, 2027.
Thank you.
Neil, can I just add one thing?
Please.
So we've talked about entitlements a little bit. One of the nice timeline related, I guess, items for the Wurtland and 10th site is that it aligned with the city's update to their zoning ordinance. And so that was initially, it was probably about, I don't know, feels like 5 years ago, but it was probably 6 or 8 months ago when that actually all moved forward. And to POA's credit, Meena's credit, their partnership with the city, I think, really helped to streamline that. And so it is entitled for what they're looking to build.
Well, that's great. So they don't have to go to the planning commission and see planning commissioners.
Correct.
Can I add one other thing?
Yes, please, Sunshine.
Meena referenced 0 to 80% AMI, area median income, and I want to translate that a little bit. It's in the affordable housing industry, we use lots and lots of acronyms. There is a dictionary that thick, probably on my side table of acronyms. So the area median income in the Charlottesville MSA, their acronym, Metropolitan Statistical Area, which is largely driven by Charlottesville City and the urban ring in Albemarle, is upwards over $120,000. What that means is that half the households in the region make below that and half the households make above that. And that's sort of irrespective of household size. That's just households. So 123,000 or so. So 80% of that is the maximum that would qualify for some of the units that Meena's project is working on 10th and Wurtland and our site as well, because we follow the same metrics. So 80% of 120,000 is 96, roughly speaking. So that's the maximum. But the way that affordable housing works is that when we go into a project, we target different unit types and not types, different unit sets. So 1s, 2s, 3s, maybe 4s in terms of bedrooms. We'll do a range of those at 80%, some of those at 60% AMI, some at 50%, some at 30%. And we do that intentionally, and then we can ensure that there are levels of affordability depending on how a person or household's income when they come to try to lease up. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
A follow-up question. When they try and lease up, for the project you're working on, which isn't as far along as the POA project, what makes the determining factor of what AMIs you shoot for? Is that part of the pro forma? And is it a 100% lease project?
There are many questions in there. the determination around what income levels we want to target is driven by a whole range of factors. One is where we think the need is in the community. Although frankly, if it were driven only by that factor, we would probably do more at the 30 and 40 and 50% and less at the upper end, because we know the need is highest there. But that's only one factor. Another factor is pragmatism, which is the reality that I talked before about how every affordable housing project needs some level of subsidy. Well, as you can do the math, if you have a rent from somebody who's making $80,000 a year and they're paying a third of their income towards rental income versus somebody who's at 30% of their income, say making $30,000 a year, they're only paying a third of their income, because that's how you determine your rent levels, is they pay a third of their income. If they're only paying a third of their income, they're paying far less rental income into the property versus a family that's at $80,000 a year versus a market rate unit. So every time we include a 30% AMI, area median income unit, versus a 50 versus an 80, we're having to recalculate how much rental income is coming into the property. The more we do on the deeper end of the affordability, it means we need more and more subsidy, because we know that you still have to make the numbers work. You still have debt you have to pay. The project still costs the same amount to operate and to build. So all you're left with is trying to find a way to reduce your debt and bring in more subsidy to get to deeper levels of affordability. So you start with a goal and you do your darndest to achieve that goal by finding all the different layers, 15 different layers of subsidy that are going to make it possible. But there are times when you have to tweak in order to make a project work. That's not ideal, but that's just often the way it is.
Great. The next question is for Pace. I think it's probably one of the more difficult questions. And so it's a 30,000-foot question. I want you to, if you could, because it's about taxes. Could you clarify the holdings of UVA versus the holdings of the foundation? Who pays taxes? And once these affordable units are in, who will be the owner, and will they be paying taxes?
Thanks, Neil. You know, the last time Neil asked me to speak, he said, I'm not going to ask any gotcha questions. And then we got there and miraculously, he said he couldn't help himself and he had to ask a gotcha question. So I don't consider this a gotcha question. Yeah, thanks, Fred. Fred, we'll tag team on this. Yeah, so UVA does not pay tax on buildings that have an academic or research use. Okay. So the UVA Foundation pays taxes just like anybody else, unless the building is used for UVA academic purposes. So these buildings will be owned by our development partners. Our connection is through a ground lease, long-term ground lease for a nominal fee. So I will defer to Meena and Sunshine, but I'm pretty sure taxes are going to be something you all are having to deal with, correct? Yeah. So that's part of the pro forma. Does that answer your question?
It does. It
Okay.
does. Fred, did you want to chime in on that?
No, nothing to.
Ducked that one beautifully, Fred. Let me ask you a different question, Fred. What you talked about AMI levels, Sunshine really gave a good primer on that. As you look across the three properties, what is the proposed mix of rental versus ownership? And would that ownership be in a land trust kind of model? How would that work? Where are you in that thinking? You may not be past that yet.
No, it's a great question and it comes up quite a bit and we are not quite past that, but I can tell you where we are. So the in-town properties will be 100% rental. There'll be no home ownership opportunities, partially because of the density and just the sort of physical makeup. North Fork is a different animal. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with North Fork, but just to quickly explain, it's about 585 acres overall. It was assembled back in the mid-90s for the long-term benefit of the university, primarily research. As I said earlier, we saw the need to bring residential to help bolster the economic development opportunities there. So we rezoned about 130 to 140 acres to a neighborhood model district. The neighborhood model district is the area that touches Airport Road. And because of the size and scale of that piece of property, there is the possibility for home ownership. We don't expect it to be at a large level, and we have not fully determined if it will be at any level. I will say this, though, when you look at, and you can see this online if you're at all interested in it, when you look at our zoning application or our code of development, you'll see that there are land bays identified. So we have about 5 land bays out there. Each one of them varies in size, but figure somewhere between 10 and 20 acres each. So there's a lot of open space if you do the calculations. The areas that we're focusing on immediately or right sort of in the next 6 months or so will be only a small portion of that, probably somewhere between 12 and 24 total acres. So maybe 1 or 2 of the land bays. We may find that other land bays in the future are better for home ownership, and that may be an opportunity we seek. We have not talked about the conduit for that, for home ownership, or how that might look. That's down the road a bit.
Great answer. Thank you. In talking about North Fork, one of the things that several speakers have brought up is the infrastructure. When you're talking about the in-town properties, there is a relatively robust transit system. Is there any plan for North Fork to be served by a new transit line?
We don't have immediate plans to do that, but it's definitely risen to the top of one of the most important things to bring to the area if we're thinking about affordability or workforce housing. We did actually sponsor a shuttle. I think it ran, Pacey may know, somewhere, I'm guessing 2015 to 2020, probably stopped when COVID hit. We ended up, that actually ran from North Fork to the university and also to Rivanna Station. Sort of just did a big loop. So we've explored possibilities for that. And we've also had conversations with the county and proffered bus stops within the development.
Thank you. Meena, question for you. Your project is moving swiftly, and it's all affordable rental. But the question is when you get to leasing, how do you identify or winnow your applicant pool?
Yeah, that's a good question. We usually have a pretty robust, a marketing plan that we develop, and a lot of it is, we work with realtors in the area. We have a marketing team on our own. We partner with organizations locally. We build our relationships. We get word of mouth. We have people that we partner with, other agencies. We put advertisements out. A lot of it is, we partner with CRHA, just various parties all over. But usually we have a pretty distinct plan, whether it's advertisement, social media, we get the word out that way. With tax credit applications, it's a pretty intense process for folks. It requires a lot of income verification, just really to make sure we're adhering to the policy. So it's a pretty lengthy process. So we usually start getting the word of mouth out beforehand. And oftentimes we do a lottery system, because oftentimes these are so oversubscribed and the need is so great that we just don't do a first come first serve basis. We usually have, say there's 180, we get 1,000 applicants. We have to figure out a system that's fair for people to be able to get these units. So we usually just don't do it on a first come first serve, but there's multiple ways that we get the word out. And oftentimes we do partner with local agents in the area.
Great. Sunshine?
Yeah, let me add something to that. Echo everything that Meena just shared. One thing that I'll highlight is that The way that the paperwork that we have to ask of prospective tenants, as Meena mentioned, is relatively intense. But it also goes stale, meaning
point.
that so we have to follow federal and state guidelines around how we determine income eligibility. We have to ask for the information that they set forth, the state and the federal government, around how we determine that. So that is completely outside of our control. And there's also and the stale part means that if you income qualify, you typically have 120 days, I think it is, before which that becomes stale. So for example, what that means is, let's say we have a project under construction right now in the Southwood community, Hickory Hope Apartments, 121 apartments. We are probably, midsummer, early summer next year, we'll be opening up. We have people expressing interest in potentially leasing up, but we have to say, no, we're not ready, because if we try to take their information, income qualify them, well, by the time we actually got to them signing a lease, that information is out of date, and then they have to do it all over again. We have to do it all over again. So it's a little bit of we can get the word out, but we don't actually start taking applications until we know when we're going to have doors being able to open and people can sign their leases because of that requirement.
And a follow-up, Sunshine, and this goes to Meena as well. Once these UVA units are up, who will manage the apartment complex and the ensuing compliance, which is significant?
Oh yeah, very significant. So I'm not going to speak for POA, but for ourselves, we manage all of our own properties. And in fact, we manage some of the properties for other organizations like JABA, Jefferson Area Board of Aging. So we do all of our property management in-house, and we work through we do the compliance side as well, although we do also contract with third-party entities that do, point checks to make sure we're doing the leases properly and that we verify this income and information correctly. So it sort of provides a backstop for us, but also gives the state and the level of certainty and comfort around how it's being done. So we do that all essentially in-house with support of third-party entities.
Meena?
Yeah, we do it exactly the same way as Sunshine. We probably do maybe a little less third party. We do have checks and balances, but we do all of the stuff in-house. It's a lot of work, especially the compliance and staying on top of it. We have our own in-house compliance department. There's, the various funders, state and federal and local. Everybody has different regulations and rules that you have to make sure you follow every single one. Definitely don't want to put anybody's housing at risk. So it's extremely important to stay on top of that. And, our management, we have management at the building itself. So that's another thing to note.
Great. Now, since I provided Pace the most difficult question so far, this is a yes, no question, I think. And I've gotten this question a lot. Will UVA employees get preferential treatment? No. Okay, thank you.
Can I build on that, actually?
Imagine that Sunshine building on something.
This is an important distinction, is that we operate under fair housing law, and being a UVA employee is not a protected class. So fundamentally, we don't have a choice. They cannot get preferential treatment. Where we also recognize as a community organization that a lot of the folks who live in our current housing are UVA employees. And we suspect that based on the income levels we're going to be pursuing, that there will be a lot of applicants who might be UVA employees as well on the lower end of the income spectrum. We want to be a resource and an opportunity for folks who are UVA employees. So even though UVA is going to take the very clear stance that it's a no, there is no preferential, and that's true for us under fair housing law, we will do outreach to encourage folks to let them know that a waiting list is opening or that this housing is coming, because we want to be partners with our community because they are part of it.
Great.
Sorry,
appre-
Neil, can I just
Yeah,
add
please.
one more thing to what Sunshine said? I think he raises a really good point, because I think one of the big things that Sunshine and I spend a lot of time on, as he gave a really good explanation of what AMI is, area median income, is when we talk from 0 to 80, is really talking with the community of what that actually means, what those percentages mean, and what are the faces of those, right? Because I think people don't really have a good understanding of that. And there's a wide range. And this is affordable housing. It's not public housing, right? So there's different ideas and understanding around that, right? So when you have a varied income tier, people, and you're in a community like Charlottesville where the area median income is very high, it's really important to get people to understand that there's a wide range of folks that fit the category of qualifying for affordable housing.
Great. That's a good clarification. Fred, you get your tough question now. I need you to get out your crystal ball. We've heard that the POA site is probably 2027 coming out of the ground. What about Piedmont and North Fork? When will we see units coming out of the ground?
Well, I might defer to Sunshine on Piedmont, but I can take a shot at North Fork. It depends. I will say that we do have the zoning, which is 3 years gone. We're in the process now of looking towards distributing an RFQ and an RFP later this fall and winter. So we'll be moving that forward. And then it will end up as you all, well, it seems obvious that you would know that we're not developing these parcels, right? We'll own the land. That will be a similar structure in North Fork. So, if we're talking multifamily, if we're talking towns, you all probably could do the math as easily as I could, probably 2 to 3 years, maybe after that. So we're probably talking, I would say 4 years. And that's a guess, right? Piedmont?
So unlike the 10th and Wetland site that had the zoning in place, we do not have the zoning in place at the Piedmont site. So we have been over the last few months, been working on getting a rezoning package together to be able to submit to the county. The amount of time that's going to take is always unpredictable, but generally 9 to 12 months for a rezoning process for a site this size. So we're sort of estimating about a year for that. We then have to submit for site plan. And then while we're going through all those entitlement steps, we have to start to pull together the funding pieces. And Meena mentioned the low-income housing tax credit program. 90% of affordable housing, 90+% nationwide on an annual basis gets built on the bedrock of low-income housing tax credits. The funding is not enough on its own, but it represents typically between 50 to 60% of the need. So without it, you ain't building anything on the rental side. And so you need that. And it's a strategic, careful process, typically with one application cycle per year. And you have to have zoning in place, and you ideally have site plan in place. And there's a whole sequence of things that have to be built together. So what we're currently anticipating, and actually one thing, the Piedmont site is also large enough at a little over 12 acres that we anticipate it not being in one phase, that we anticipating it being probably 2, maybe 3 phases. That's still being worked through. But the first phase, we think we're going to go for the low-income housing tax credit application in early 2026, that once-a-year cycle that I mentioned. And so Meena referenced early 2025 for the 10th and Wetland site. It'd be ours, for the 2026 cycle, if everything goes as we expect right now. Usually it's 15 months after you get 9 months after you get awarded before you can get to closing, 9 months to 12 months, and then you have the 18 to 24 months of construction. So we're still a ways out. There's a lot of work ahead.
Can I just riff off that for 1 second? So up at one of the differentiators, I think at North Fork is that we may or may not be looking at LIHTC funding. There may be other alternatives that might be less competitive in a sense, and maybe it's 4%, maybe it's other HUD funding options. Maybe it's ways to think through some of the incentives that the county is providing. So it's a little bit different than the 100% affordable in-town properties.
Great. I want to just before we close, I want to bring up a couple of things. Number one, we're really thrilled to have UVA at the affordable housing table. I've been in this job a long time, and they weren't always there. And I credit President Ryan as well as you guys for really bringing it forward and doing it the right way. It takes a long time to do this, and we appreciate the effort that it takes and to do it right. I looked over your development themes and values, and I have seen you use those in evaluating applications for RFPs, as well as how you're moving forward in just about everything. So that is very helpful. I also would be remiss if I didn't say that I'm thrilled that we have Dave Norris here from the CAAR Foundation, who is our charitable arm that deals with housing affordability. And I'm certain that you'll be hearing from Dave and working together on projects going forward. I do want to thank you guys for your time. I know Meena has a hard stop at 1, and I want to be respectful of all of your time. But would you please give a round of applause to our panelists? Thank you for being here, and thank you to RPAC for funding this event. Have a great day.